Welcome everyone. Techniques for collecting data information toward psychometric assessment. This videos will contain pertain to all types of the pros and cons of data collection methodologies and how do we should be proceeding with data collection methods. Video will be a tad long, but I believe once you have completely watched this video a number of times, things will become much more clear. So, introduction, we will be talking about the strategies. What are the exact good characteristics that needs to be entertained? We will differentiate between qualitative data, when should we go for it, and quantitative data, when should be preferred over the other data format. And definitely, yes, the tools for collecting data. So, yes, we'll talk about data collection strategies, characteristics of good measures, qualitative versus quantitative data, and tools thereof to collect data per se. Data collection strategies, there is no one best methodologies for it. In fact, nobody can say that this particular style or my way is the right way to go for it. In fact, what I will try to give you is present with you different strategies altogether and give you a balanced viewpoint as to how data can be collected in a most neutral and unbiased fashion. First and foremost thing, what do you want to know? That is very important. The number or the stories, the number of data or the number of fact and figure that comes around it. Whether the data resides in which place, is it environment, is it there in your system, or is it in the memories of the people? Resources, the time available. Now, this is where the person who is collecting the data or the investigator, what kind of resources he or she is can entertain or has a luxury to entertain. Complexity of the data has to be collected. Frequency of data collection is very important. Intended forms of data analysis is what we should be looking forward to as on when on basis. Now, this is the time that you need to understand the importance of data thereby. So, rules for collecting data. First and foremost thing which I prefer is have multiple methods of data collection, multiple innumerable methods of collecting data. Use available data, but you need to find out how the measurements were defined. You need to find out how the data was collected, clean, pruned, the extent of the missing data, if any, how accuracy the data was ensured when data was collected and you are just sourcing it from a third party. It's your secondary sources, right? So you need to have this thing questions in your mind. Should be always be doubting as how the things were measured, what were the data collected from, the extent of the missing data and the accuracy thereof. So, very basic rules for collecting data is you should be sensitive about the burdens to others. You might be doing collection of data in pertinence to your research activities, in pertinence to your fact-finding projects, but at the same time, this might not be at the cost of somebody else's emotions. So, be sensitive to the burdens of other. Pre-test, and pre-test. Always have a pilot study. Establish procedures and follow them. The protocol then and there, as on when on basis, maintains accurate results of definitions and coding. Verify accuracy and coding data input every now and then. Ensure that the people understand in what kind of responses that they figure out, what kind of data sets are they entertaining. Then we have the structured approach. All data collected in a particular fashion needs to have the similar treatment. Remember, especially important for multi-site and probably cluster evaluation, so that you can compare. So you need to admonish the different methods of data collection. You should be very similar, very uniform, be it in whichever location that you're looking into it, be it even whichever segment that you're looking into it, very different verticals that you are entertaining. Important is to make comparison with alternative intervention. Alternative intervention is a different data collecting method. You might be doing it on your own. You might be sourcing data from the secondary sources. Are they coming on the same platform? Are the data signifying similar examples, similar demonstrations as such? What I'll do is, when do we require structured approach? When we are trying to address the extent of the question as how detailed you want to go around it. Have a large sample, have a huge population, probably cannot be maneuvered or covered by every the principal investigator. Now know what needs to be measured. What is your end objective? That is very clear. Need to show result numerically. Need to make comparison across different sites or intervention as on when on basis. That is exactly what you are looking forward to. Semi-structured approach is systematic and follow general procedures, but data are not collected in exactly the same fashion people are approaching. Now, this is what systematic and general procedures people might get swayed away, or people might incorporate the sensitivity of the environment, the data, and probably be little bit more flexible in their approach. Can be open, can be fluidic, does not follow a rigid script, may ask for detail. People can tell on their own way. People are encouraged to manifest their emotions as to their requirement. Now, use semi-structured approach when you are conducting an exploratory work, when you are trying to understand a perspective from a different point of view, when you want to understand the themes thereby. You require theories, narrative stories, you require example, you require elaboration of incident, want an in-depth, rich backstage information, seeks to understand the result of data that were or are is unexpected. Now, what is the characteristics of good measure? You need to understand the data which you have collected. Are they readable? Are they relevant? Are they credible? Are they valid? Are they reliable? Now, these are nothing but good characteristics. Characteristics which makes data vibrant, characteristic which makes data unique, characteristic which makes data into black and white. You can segregate the data which are credible, valid, and reliable thereby. So relevance, does the measure captures what it measures? That is what we are trying to do around it. If we're trying to find the measurement of happiness and you are looking at a bank balance, probably these are two different things altogether. So does that measure capture what matter? Do not measure what it is, instead what is required. Did I say happiness and bank balance don't go hand in hand? But then people might get it aligned. Credibility, is the measure believable? Will it be viewed as a reasonable and appropriate way to capture the information sought? You need to understand, you need to ask this question. Does it make sense altogether? Internal validity is how well does the measure capture what it does, how well it has represented it in front of an audience, how well it can be presented in a convincing fashion. That will tell me the internal validity, or are the waiting list a valid measures of demand then there. Reliability, a measure of precision, a stability, extent to which the same result would be obtained when repeated trials are being made. How reliable are birth weights of a newborn infant? Speed measures by a stopwatch, as the case might be. This is what is reliability. A measures precision, stability, extent to which the same result would be obtained. As and when on basis. Qualitative approach is when we are talking in terms of number, in terms of black and white data that will give you a clear cut indication what has been happening, what is the right method of doing it. Data can be precisely measured in terms of, let's say, given an example of cost, age, length, height, area. Exactly speaking, what are we talking about? Everything can be depicted in numbers. It is harder to develop and easier to analyze. Probably quantitative data might be very difficult to collect, definitely difficult to populate, but probably easy to analyze. Perhaps, on the other hand, qualitative approach is data that deal with description, with emotion, with thought, with incidents, data that can be observed, that can be self-reported, but probably you are always left to the idea of your own interpretation if it is observed. So yes, it is less structure. Definitely easier to develop because your interpretation can vary from people to people, can provide a rich data, detailed, widely applicable. But it's very difficult to analyze, very challenging. It's a labor intensive to collect for the collection of it, and usually generate longer than other reports. And the report, the conclusion might be a little perplexed one. So which data should you prefer, quantitative or qualitative? Quantitative is when you want to do a statistical analysis, want to be very precise, know what you measure, and want to cover a large group. Qualitative, on the other hand, wants to be narrative or in-depth information, are not sure of what you are able to measure, and do not need need to quantify the result. Perhaps that is when you should be looking for qualitative data for an in-depth knowledge, in-depth information, understanding, and probably there is no quantification required. Whereas quantitative data is when you are coming to do a statistical analysis and coming with a certain theories that you want to prove or disprove. Your hypothesis is what you are looking at it. Unobtrusive and obtrusive method. Obtrusive methods, when data collection method actually obtain information from those that has been evaluated, let's say interviews, surveys, focus group, so people know that they have been collecting, they are the sources of information. Whereas unobtrusive, people are not knowing when, but they are providing data altogether. So they do not collect information directly from the evaluators. Let's say the document, what does a document says? What does Google Earth says? What does the observation at a distance says? What is the trash of the stars that goes around it? These are the examples that you go around, observe, you find your workstation very dirty, you will have an opinion about the person who manages the workstation. Probably that is how we want to go around it. So how to decide on data collection approach? This is something which is very, very pertinent given the choice of situation, given what you are looking as far as your report is concerned. Is it qualitative or is it quantitative? Each technique, remember, each technique is unique and appropriate for different situation. Caution, all techniques are subjected to biasness of the principal investigators, of the people involved into it. So to remove biasness, I have this triangulations. Triangulations will increase the accuracy of data, and probably the data will come up absolutely free from any kind of noises. So one of these things, there are basically triangulations of methods, sources, and evaluators. Now, what are methods? And when you are collecting the same data using different methods, so something from interview, something from files, something from secondary sources, whereas triangular sources is collecting the same information but from different sources. Let's say the customer satisfaction from the customer point of view, from the employee's point of view, from the vendor's point of view, from the stakeholders point of view, from the government point of view. So you have triangulations of sources. Now what is triangulation of evaluators? Now the same thing, everybody is doing a research, and every information that one evaluator is doing, the investigator is doing, can it be compared with the other investigator or evaluator? Perhaps. Probably this will be a confidence enhancing methods for you. So now comes the participation tool. Now this is nothing but the participation method that comes around it. How many people are involved? What is the sample size? What is the population size? The records, the secondary data, the observation, the surveys, the interviews. So how many people were interacted? How many people knew what they were talking around it? How many people understood the question that they were giving an answers to, responses to? Focus group, diaries, journal, self-reported checklist. Expert judgment, Delphi technique is the other method that comes around here. We'll talk about each method one at a time. Is participatory method. Now this can be done with a group meetings, mapping, or let's say a translate works. When you sit down and speak in an informal fashion within the community, perhaps things would come up very quickly. The record in the secondary sources is nothing but the files, but the records, the historical things about the past quarter, the previous fiscal year, the computer databases, the industry reports, the government report, the other report prior to the evaluation, census data, household survey data, electronic mail list, discussion groups, budgets, documents. These are everything that has been documented. Your newspaper reports, your television report. Now, these are nothing but secondary data that comes around it. Now, can we have existing data sets? Now, existing data sets will give you key ideas about the validity, reliability, accuracy, response rate, the data dictionaries and missing data rates out there. Why existing data sets? Because you know whether these existing data sets have been applied and implied, whether they have come to be true or not. Then is something called observation. Now, this is something which is left to interpretation. Why? Because people, the principal investigator is just observing. Let's say the traffic pattern at certain point of the day, certain roads, certain traffic get congested. And the same point of time, at a different point of time, the same place, there is no traffic congestion at all. So there is a traffic pattern, the land use pattern, the layout of city, the rural areas, the quality of housing, condition of road, condition of building, and what goes on to the health clinic, as the case might be, is what we are looking for. Now, ways to record information. Now, this is where you need to understand you are observing the traffic pattern, you are observing everything. Now, how do you record it? It's printed from space to record. With space to record, probably you have preformed notions around it, preformed questions around it. You understand what you are looking into it. Recording checks or sheets with yes or no option, tallies, rating scales. Field notes is Lee structure recorded in a narrative, descriptive style, if say, may we say so. Guidelines for planning observation, having more than one observer if feasible. Train observers so that they can observe the same thing. Pilot, test, and observation data collection instrument. For less structured approaches, have key question in mind. How do we proceed out here? These are the guidelines for planning the observation thereby. Now, tools and survey. No, what is service and interview is excellent for asking people, getting their participation, getting their opinion, perception, and their ideas thereby. This will be a good mechanism to collect feedback and viewpoints altogether. It might be less accurate. Why? Because people might have their own biasness coming into their behavior. Sample should be representative of a whole. This is again the sample size, the sample population needs to be a complete replica of the whole population, perhaps. Again, a big problem with the response rate out here. Structured for service, it can be structured or semi-structured. In structured, precisely word with a range of predetermined responses. It can be, you can also give the responses in the sense that you were happy, but not to a certain extent, or you were happy and were ecstatic about it. So everyone maybe asks a similar question, same question, and the same way they need to give their choices, the answers thereby. Semi-structures ask the same general set of questions, but this time let the answers be open-ended. This time let the respondent frame their own answers, whether they were ecstatic, whether they are happy, whether they were okay with the responses or the situation. So, semi-structured and structured, what are the differences? Structures are harder to develop, easier to complete. Once the data has been there, you can easily analyze it. But more efficient when working with a large number of people. But what is happening with semi-structure? It is very easier since you are just open-ended questions that you're coming around it. But once the responses have been jotted down, it is very difficult to complete. It's for burdensome people to understand the self-administered questionnaire. Probably why? Because interpretation varies. It depends on the analyzing power of it. Uh, it provides a richer source of data, but interpretation to open-ended responses are always subjected to bias, not only from the point of view of the respondent, but also from the point of view of the investigator. Interviews often are more semi-structured in nature, used to explore complexities, issues in depth. It gives it gives away unclearing question, forgives of mistakes. Probably interviews are absolutely open-ended, and in a split of a second, people give their viewpoints, can provide evaluators with intuitive sense of the situation and understanding and the in-depth knowledge that goes around it. Focus groups, types of qualitative research where small homogeneous groups of people are brought together to informally discuss specific topics under guidance of a moderator, as the case might be. Purpose is to identify issues, themes, not just interesting information, but also on counts, the number of people that we are looking into it. So here comes the qualitative research with a small homogeneous group. Identify the issues and the themes thereby. Diaries and the self-reported checklist, this is something which is already present in the system. The tool, the logbooks, when you want to see what happened, you can always see the movement of your vehicle, the movement of your inventory, the movement of everything which has been logged in your diaries, and you can see how the consumption pattern changes for the inventory, probably how the consumption pattern changes for your traffic movement or vehicle movement. So participants capture experiences in real time fashion, and nothing later in the questionnaire. It is there documented. You just have to study the document and come up with the other data collection methods altogether. So guidelines for journals and diaries. So simple, there are three steps. Recruit people face to face, encourage participation, encourage appeal to altruism, assure confidence, assure, incentivize them to part with the information, let them be open, let there be transparency. Provide a booklet to each participants, cover page with a clear instruction, definition, example, short memory joggers, explain terms, comment on the last page calendar. Consider a time frame of collecting data. If too long, may become burdensome or tedious. If too short, may miss the behavior or the event as such. So you need to understand the time period of collecting data, how appropriate the duration should be. Is it long is enough, or is it short enough, as the case might be? Expert judgment, use of the expert, one-on-one basis as a panel. Government task forces advisory can be structured or unstructured. Issue selecting expert, as the case might come across with it. Now, how do we go for selecting expert? Now, it can be SME, the subject matter expert that we are looking into it, based on their experiences, based on their perspective, based on their viewpoints, based on the technical know-how. So these are essentially subject matter expert that we talk around every now and then. The Delphi methods enable experts to engage remotely in a dialogue and reach consensus. Often is all about priorities. Expert asks specific questions, often rank choices. Responses goes to the central sources and are summarized. Feedback to the expert without any attribution. Expert can agree or argue with others' comments. Process might be iterative, as the case might be. Now we are talking about Delphi technique. Delphi technique is where people have been engaged remotely. They are being given a question. Based upon the question, they often come up with their own kind of answers, responses. This time it can be semi-structured or structured. Structured would be rank choices. Based on the choices, they are again sent us again sent a responses, questions to the expert, who in turn will again respond until and unless every of the expert comes on a viewpoint, on a more or less on a similar pattern. Is a Delphi technique. Process might be a bit longer duration, but eventually you'll get the pros and cons of the best solution that comes around it. And that is where the from expert system to a Delphi technique. In expert system, everybody can sit together in a small room and brainstorm it, storm into it. But in Delphi technique, nobody is sitting in the same platform, same room. Nobody is aware of the same responses that they're coming about. Everybody is analyzing the problem in isolation, in silos, and coming up with the solution based upon the feedback that keeps getting creeping off. So other measurement tools are scales, tape measures, stopwatches, chemical test, health testing tools, aptitude test, achievement test, citizen report card, and you have plentiful of it. Plentiful of which gives you a good assessment of your psychometry, how well you are cognitively balanced. So just to wind off the data collection summary, choose more than one data collection. Remember, this is what I keep on hampering upon it. More than one data collection method. And believe me or not, I started the presentations with stating that there is no best tool. And I still end it with there is no best tool. Do not let the tool drive your work, but rather choose the right tool to address, to evaluate the question thereof. With this, I come to an end of this particular data collection methodologies for psychometric assessment. Thank you for watching this video till the very end.